Right, finally, at long last, a wee look at your soils. So, I have to apologise about the focus. It's difficult to match the camera's focus to the focus of the microscope. So I'm basically doing this looking through the microscope lenses. So it's going to be a bit in and out of focus. I try to focus the camera as well at some points. So let's just have a wee look and see what we got here. These are either root hairs, I should imagine, or incredibly large fungal rhizomorphs, but more likely to be root hairs. So all the little specks that you're seeing are most likely minerals. There's some clear looking sort of glass-like structures, which are indeed that, they're just silica. We can see these aggregates. So these things, you'll see them more clearly once I'm zoomed in. This is only times four at the moment, so a total magnification of 40. But these little aggregates, which are just currently appearing as kind of black blobs, those are humic and fulvic acids, and those are created through biological activity, basically through the recycling of organic matter, especially fungi. So as fungi break down recalcitrant bits of organic matter, be that dead wood or lignin, cellulose, that kind of thing, once they've finished with it, it's changed into an even more recalcitrant form, which are these humic and fulvic acids, and they can sit in the soil fairly inert for many thousands of years. Of course, they're a food source for other things, other species of fungi, for example, basidiomycetes and deuteromycetes, which are the species of fungi, the family of fungi that have been around on planet Earth for the longest amount of time. So you might call them the most highly evolved. They're most adapted to eating these highly recalcitrant forms of food. So here we go. All these little blobs that are moving around, these are all bacteria. We've got mostly cocci bacteria because you can identify them just by their shape. So anything that's very round is a cocci. Anything that's rod-shaped is a bacillus. So you can see a few rod-shaped things. You can see diplococci, which is when two cocci are attached together. That honey-coloured thing on the left-hand side there, that was a fulvic acid. So once I slow down, I'll explain a few more of the things that I'm showing you here. That lemon-shaped thing, feel free to pause the video. That lemon-shaped thing we just skipped past, that's a fungal spore. It's probably a VAM spore. That thing there is a piece of silica. Let's see what else we got here. That is a bit of plant matter, that transparent thing in the top right-hand corner. I should get some hopefully decent focused points at some point. It's much clearer when you're looking through the microscope, obviously. It's much brighter, and it's far more defined. All the edges are far more defined. So a host of bacteria, a lot of bacteria. And the things that we're really looking for with this many bacteria, of course, the fungi. We want, if you're trying to grow vegetable crops, it's very important to have the fungal to bacterial ratio roughly equal, so 1-to-1 ratio, and that's in terms of biomass, so physical weight. These are the conditions in which vegetables will grow optimally. So we can see all these little bacteria and fungi, and they have many functions in the soil. If we want to look at it as functions rather than just existence, so they are responsible for the structure of the soil. So if we have soil without any forms of microbiology in it, all we have is geology, and it's either going to be sand, silts, and clays, or bedrock, and it'll have no structure whatsoever. It'll either be solid rock or it'll just be friable material that'll just disintegrate and fall apart. So biology is the only reason that soil appears as it does, so nice and dark and deep rich, and a crumbly texture, a kind of loamy texture that people are so after. That's entirely created by the glues that are created by bacteria and fungi. So the glomalins, and glycocomalax as well from the fungi. The fungi and bacteria also alter the pH of soil, and they're also purely responsible for what pH your soil is. Nothing to do with the geology necessarily. Fungi produce acidic glues, so they will give you a lower pH, and bacteria will give you a higher pH because they produce acidic alkaline glues. We can see a few of these fungal strands. This thing right in the center, I believe, is an Arcella, which is a type of protist. It's a predator. And it's actually capturing some bacteria, I believe. You can see that round circular thing with these little star-like protrusions coming out of it in the rim. That thing right in the center is some sort of insect appendage that's broken off. That's a fungal hyphae for sure. You can you know that because you can see the cross walls within the structure dividing up all the individual cells. We can tell if it's pathogenic or if it's a beneficial, as it were, fungus. Beneficial fungus, of course, being any VAM fungus, so arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, are the most beneficial, but they don't have to be mycorrhizal and have a plant connection in order to be beneficial for our soil, because they're still responsible for sequestering carbon, acting as a food source, improving soil structure, holding on to nutrients. The other really, really key point, I suppose, is that all this biology that's churning away here, I don't really know what's going on here. I must have been seeing something in the camera I wasn't seeing in the... seeing something in the microphone I wasn't seeing in the camera. The really key point is that biology is wholly responsible for every single nutrient that your plant requires. Your plant can't generate any nutrients for itself apart from those derived from carbon, of course, which it gets from photosynthesis. So the only thing that a plant can do is take carbon from the atmosphere via photosynthesis using the energy of sunlight to grab carbon molecules and then change them into very simple sugars, so polysaccharides, for example. And then these polysaccharides, depending on the species of plant, it pumps into its own roots and pumps into the soil. So depending on the species of plant, for example, what we would call a weed, which would be like any sort of, in the scientific definition of a weed, that would be like an early pioneer species, for example. So something like a creeping thistle, creeping buttercup, etc. Things that turn up first and disturb soil. They pump about 15 to 20% of the carbon that's a diatom, by the way, right in the center there. They pump about 15 to 20% of the carbon that they capture into the soil. But then a plant that's higher up in succession, so that might be your vegetables, or it might be some of your gooseberries, tomatoes, etc. Trees, definitely. They can pump up to 40 to 70% of the sugars that they're harvesting from the sun into the soil. And this is to feed very specific species of biology, microbiology, be that fungi or bacteria. And they alter the chains of sugars and the composition of sugars in order to feed very specific species. And then these species will essentially harvest the minerals that they need for them via the bedrock material. So biological weathering of bedrock material, it's responsible for about 70% of weathering on bedrock, and the remaining percentage is from the weather. So yes, your plant is basically totally reliant on biology. Without the biology, the plant's dead, 100%. No way. No way that a plant can survive in sterile soil. So yes, it's this dance between biology and a plant. And then nutrient cycling is another thing that happens. when we have bacteria, for example, in our soils, we require predators, just like we do in higher trophic levels. We require predators to cycle those nutrients through an ecosystem, so the ecosystem of the soil. So, for example, a bacteria on average has like a carbon to nitrogen ratio of like 5:1. So that's 5 carbon molecules for every 1 nitrogen molecule. But then a protist just being a general term for like ciliates and amoebas, etc., they have a much higher carbon to nitrogen ratio, which means that for every bacteria that they consume, they are gaining an excess of nutrients. So these excess of nutrients will eventually, once a vacuole within a protist is full, will be expelled in a plant available form. And this is how the plant garners its nutrients from bacteria and from fungi, of course. But of course, fungi do have these endo and ecto mycorrhizal connections, certain species of fungi. But all species of fungi can be beneficial. So yes, I know it's a bit of a ramble, and there's a lot to cover. I didn't really say much about what we actually saw on the screen. This soil, it looks to have a good number of fungal spores, so that tells me that there's a good presence of fungi. I haven't done a proper survey, so I can't tell you exactly what ratios of biomass might be. A lot of bacteria, clearly. A lot of cocci bacteria. We would ideally like to see a bit more variation in the speciation of the bacteria, and some of these fungal hyphae look a bit suspect to me. Just because there's a fungal hyphae in there doesn't necessarily mean that it's beneficial. Of course, you can get molds and ergots, which are pathogenic fungi, and most of them looked like they were a decent width. They had cross walls. They were lacking the sort of nice dark, deep, rich color that I would look for a beneficial fungi. But I think most of the ones that we saw were in some ways beneficial. So yeah, it looks to be pretty good compost, I would say. It's definitely, comparing it to the municipal compost that I was ranting on about, it's a completely different ballpark from that. It's much, much better. There is no fungi in the municipal compost. So yeah, pretty great job. The things that I might suggest, I suppose, to really bring out the fungal population is fungal foods. So if you're wanting sort of quick results, you can get a bit of humic acid, which is a really great resource for fungi, and you can spray that on as a sort of application to your soil to increase the fungal biomass. So yeah, no doubt I'll have a more in-depth chat with you later on, so I hope you enjoyed. All right, bye.